So even though I very much enjoyed this game, I can see why others might be a little skeptical. Mafia as a series has always carried a certain identity for its fans, and that identity for many is tied closely to the idea of an open world. Even though the previous games weren't massive GTA style sandboxes, they still gave you that sense of space and freedom. You could take in the atmosphere on a slow drive through town, pull over and admire the time period that you were in. It wasn't just about completing the missions. It was existing within that world. The streets had their own rhythm, the pedestrians their own chatter. It felt alive in a way that encouraged you to drift from one corner of the map to another without really worrying about the ticking clock of the main story. So when Mafia: The Old Country landed and it turned out to be something else entirely, a game with a much more linear, much more focused, much more deliberately guided story, I get it. I completely understand why some players are raising an eyebrow, or maybe two. For those expecting the familiar open world comfort, this felt like a jarring shift in direction. And let's be honest here, if you're one of those players, if you were hoping for another sprawling map full of optional diversions and you felt let down when you realized this game wasn't that, I hear you. I mean, I truly do. Whether you've been following the franchise since the first game or you just stumbled into it expecting something in the vein of Saints Row, GTA, or again from what you've heard from the previous games, I understand where that disappointment might come from. But here's where my perspective starts to differ, because after actually playing The Old Country, not just watching trailers and reading impressions, but actually sitting down and letting the game take me where it wanted to, I came away feeling the opposite. After seeing it through to the end, letting the characters breathe, letting the world settle into my mind, I realized that this shift toward a more cinematic, linear structure wasn't really a downgrade at all. Now, we have to start with the elephant in the room, the current state of open world games. If you look at the gaming landscape today, it feels like everything wants to be open world. Whether it's an RPG, an action game, a shooter, or even genres that never used to go anywhere near open world design, there's this pressure to make everything as explorable as possible. The marketing lines are all the same: hundreds of hours of gameplay, massive maps, countless activities. At first glance, that sounds like a great deal, more bang for your buck, but I think we've all been there. You start playing, you're blown away for the first 10 or 15 hours, you marvel at the scale, and then you start to notice the cracks, the filler content, the go here, collect 3 of these, deliver them over their objectives, NPCs that repeat the same lines no matter where you go. You start recognizing the copy and paste. Here's the hard truth. Building an open world is expensive. It's not just about making a big map. You have to fill it with believable cities, towns, countrysides. You have to design NPC schedules, traffic patterns, dynamic weather systems, ambient sounds. You have to make sure all those systems play nicely with the main story. That can take years of development time, and that does mean something else usually has to give, and more often than not, what suffers is the story. When so much effort is poured into making the world physically exist, there's less time to make the worlds emotionally connect. Dialogue gets more generic, cinematics get trimmed down, complex story arcs get simplified because the game needs to account for the fact that players might wander off for hours before returning to a mission. Think about it. You have this dramatic cutscene where a character says, "We need to act now, there's no time to waste," or something generic like that. But in an open world game, that urgency has to survive the fact that the player might spend the next 3 in-game weeks hunting animals, buying new clothes, or just ignoring the crisis entirely. Writers know this, so they adapt. They write around the problem by keeping things vague or less emotionally tied to timing. And while that's pretty smart design, it also means you lose a lot of narrative punch. And just to be clear, I'm not here to trash any open world games. Some of my all-time favorite games are open world, but I think it's important to admit they're not always the best tool for the job. And with Mafia: The Old Country, the story and the characters were the job. They needed to be in the spotlight without distractions. And you know this isn't the same beast as before. It doesn't throw you into a sprawling city with a blinking mini-map full of icons screaming for your attention. Instead, it drops you into a very specific time and place, early 1900s Sicily. It says, sit down, let me tell you about Enzo. And Enzo isn't a gangster, not yet. He's not a criminal mastermind plotting his next big heist. He's a miner, a working class guy just trying to get through the day, completely unaware that his life is about to take a turn that will pull him into the world of organized crime. The pacing here is pretty deliberate. Some of you might even say the game is too slow at the beginning. I didn't fire a single shot for about the first 20% of the game. And for certain players, that's going to sound like a death sentence for engagement, but for me, it was exactly the right call. That slow burn gives me the time to settle into Enzo's life. You understand his work, his relationships, his frustration. So when the first bullet does finally fly, it doesn't just mark the start of the action, it marks a turning point in his life. You feel it because you know who this character is. And the setting is nothing short of honestly breathtaking. I played this game on an Xbox Series X, and not even with the ultra settings PC players can enjoy. And still, there were moments where I had to stop just mid-mission just to look around. The rolling hills, the sun casting that golden Mediterranean glow, villages that looked like they were lifted straight from a century-old photograph. And then there are the faces. The subtlety in the animation is absolutely remarkable. The Don raising an eyebrow ever so slightly during a tense conversation, a character's eyes narrowing in suspicion, a smirk playing at the edge of someone's lips. These are small details, but they make every interaction feel truly alive. And there's something I love. The game doesn't just hand you respect from the Don. You're not instantly his right-hand man after 1 or 2 missions. He keeps his distance, he tests you, and when you finally do earn your place in the family, it feels like a genuine achievement.
Do you wish to commit yourself, your life, to this family?
Yes, I do.
Then, before the eyes of all here present, join me.
Now, here's the thing. The Old Country isn't just about the big set pieces, it's the little moments that make it special. Like the time you're driving home after a long night, following your friends in the car ahead. They're drunk, swerving, hitting the wall, laughing their heads off, and you can't help but also laugh too because it feels like you're literally there. Or the race where your car doesn't start at the beginning. Everyone else takes off and you're left behind scrambling to get the engine going, and somehow you still manage to cross that finish line. Or the morning when Tino almost catches you with Isabella, that tense, quiet scramble to hide what's going on. These aren't just gameplay beats, they're memories. They're moments where you forget you're playing and just feel like you're living in this world. And that's truly something not every game, open world or not, can pull off. Now, cards on the table, the gameplay isn't groundbreaking. The shooting has noticeable sway. At first, it feels awkward, but then you remember, oh wait, Enzo is a miner. He's not a trained hitman. It actually makes sense. You're not supposed to feel like John Wick from the jump. The stealth missions, I could have done with fewer. For a time period when the Mafia was at its most brutal, there's maybe a little too much sneaking around, but here's the thing, even in those slower or less exciting missions, I was still invested throughout the game when it comes to the story, because I wanted to see what happened next. And when average mechanics are elevated by a strong story, that's when you know the narrative is doing its job. Mafia: The Old Country isn't the sandbox some players hoped for, and that's perfectly fine. What it is a tightly focused, beautifully executed story about a man finding his place and sometimes losing it in a dangerous, unpredictable world. By going linear, the developers gave themselves the freedom to polish every scene, every performance, every emotional beat, and that's a freedom they used very well. Not every game needs to be 100 hours long. Sometimes the best experience is the one that respects your time, takes you on a curated journey, and leaves you thinking about it long after the credits roll. If you passed on this game because it wasn't open world, maybe it's time to give it a chance. Sometimes the best road isn't the one with all the detours, it's the one that takes you exactly where you need to go. And that's exactly why, if you were one of those that just decided to completely skip this game because it wasn't completely open world, I at least want to use this video to encourage you to give this game a shot. I gave it a shot. A majority of players gave this game a shot, and I don't think any of us, once we reached the end, regretted any moment of it. But guys, until the next one, thank you so much for watching, and peace out.